Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of More to Explore. My name is Brian Bird, and this week, the big news, of course, is that Bear Cam is back. It's the 13th year of the live cams here at Brooks Falls and Katmai National Park, and today we'll be going over some of the basics to help any new viewers get acquainted with the cams. So, we're also going to hear from Joe Pifer, the Director of Field Operations, about the improvements made this year on the tech side. And later, we'll get an update with all the nesting activity with Exploded.org's bird naturalist, Holly Garrett, with Egg Watch. So let's start with the bears. And to help us learn about the bear cams is someone who's been there since day one, Exploded.org's resident naturalist, Mike Fitz. Mike, how you doing this today?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thanks for having me back, and happy to be along for the ride. And if you're new to Exploded.org, new to the bear cams, welcome to the community. It's my favorite cam group, certainly the most popular cam group on Exploded.org. And we want to welcome back all of our longtime viewers. It's just not bears on Exploded.org. We do have about 200 live nature cams all over the world. So there's always something to watch. But today, as Brian said, we're focusing on the brown bear cams at Brooks River in Katmai National Park for much of the program. We have some other updates to share later in the program, but the cams went live last week and the bears are trickling back to the river. In fact, this morning we've already seen several bears. So I'm curious to know from our audience which bears you're looking forward to seeing and why. So if you can drop those notes in the comments, we'll be looking for them during the program today. But let's focus on Brooks River and why it's so special, because it is a place that people from around the world really have fallen in love with. And the attention is well deserved. It's a place of cultural and ecological richness. People have used the river nearly continuously for the last 5,000 years. Nearby volcanoes remind us of the planet's power to foment change. The area's watersheds are intact and unaltered by human engineering, and these support some of Earth's largest wild salmon runs. The habitat is exceptionally rich for brown bears. More than 2,000 brown bears are estimated to live within Katmai, and every summer dozens of them gather at Brooks River to fish for sockeye salmon. Most of the bears who fish here return to the river year after year, and 335 is a good example. This is footage of her just recorded last week. She was born in 2020. She was introduced to Brooks River by her mother that year, and she returned this year with her first litter of cubs. So I think that's a storyline that a lot of people are going to be following this year. We can get to know the bears as individuals and see nearly the full spectrum of bear behavior on the cameras. It's real life, it's raw, it's fascinating. It keeps me coming back year after year, Brian.
Yeah, definitely. And I can definitely resonate with 335 because I started watching Bear Cam in 2019, and that's when her mom, 435 Holly, won Fat Bear Week. And then, of course, the next year she came back with 335 Jolly. And to see Jolly now coming back with her own cubs is actually very, very special. But I think one thing that I think will help new viewers get ready for Bear Cam is to see where the cams are and what they can see. So we have 6 cameras on the river and a bonus camera on top of the nearby mountain. So Mike, let's take a tour of the Brooks River and see where the cams are at.
Yeah, so we're going to zoom into Katmai National Park in Alaska, which is the 4th largest national park in the United States. It is only accessible by plane or boat. Brooks River is located in the west central portion of Katmai, and the river is about 1.5 miles long, or about 2.4 kilometers, and it flows from Lake Brooks, which you can see at lower left, to Naknek Lake, which is at upper right. Brooks Falls is located at about the river's halfway mark. Along with our webcam partner, the National Park Service, Exploded.org hosts and maintains several webcams at the river. The signal from the bear cams is either transmitted directly to a satellite internet connection, or it's relayed to a radio repeater on Dumpling Mountain, which then sends the signal to the small town of King Salmon about 30 miles away. Go ahead, Brian. I think you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, so we have an image here of the brooks. So let's take a closer look at what the cams see. And let's start, of course, with the most popular cam. It's the Brooks Falls camera, where you see the most iconic bears on the lip fishing for salmon, which I believe we have 910 here getting the first lip catch of the season.
Yeah, bears gather at Brooks Falls because the waterfall forms a temporary barrier to migrating salmon. And if you're a bear that knows how to fish the top of the waterfall, then you know there's only a few spots where salmon can jump the falls successfully. So you can stand there and wait for a meal to jump almost into your mouth. So bears use the waterfall's topography to their advantage to catch salmon when they are most vulnerable. And you'll see every class of bear here from the very old to the very young. But the best access to Brooks Falls is dominated by the biggest and most assertive bears. The falls camera itself focuses on the falls, but it also pans downstream to watch activity there. So this area that is shaded in yellow is the line of sight for the falls camera.
That is. And also with the falls cam, just below it, we have the falls low camera. So here's the view of the falls high, and the falls low is pretty close to it. It's literally just below it vertically. And this cam is really awesome because we get to see that bird's eye view, giving it a very unique perspective.
And with many bears packed into a small space, the falls is a place of conflict and competition. However, conflict is risky and energy intensive. So we also witness behavior in the bears that are examples of tolerance and cooperation. Getting to know your neighbor, getting along with your neighbor is just as important, and often more so than whether you have the ability to assert your dominance at Brooks Falls.
Yeah, and one of the cool things that I wanted to show for any new viewers out there is like, why are the cams where they are on the river here? So you can see where the Brooks Falls, that's where the existing infrastructure is. So you see all of our cams are where the viewing platforms are. So you can see for the Brooks Falls cam, it's on the platform and it looks out over the falls. You see the Brooks Falls low cam just below it. And not too far down the way downriver is the Riffles platform where we have the Riffles cam.
The Riffles overlooks a relatively shallow area of the river where the water flows over cobbles and boulders. Its line of sight looks across the river and upstream to the falls. So you see it shaded here in white. Bears have the instinct to catch salmon, but fishing is a skill they must learn. The riffles can be a pretty challenging place for bears to fish since there are no significant barriers that hinder a salmon's escape. So salmon have many opportunities to avoid bears in this area. But bears, again, they're using their learned skill to be able to catch salmon in a variety of places at the riffles. So watch the riffles cam for bears to use a combination of stealth and patience to pounce on unwary salmon, and speed and strength to charge through the water and run salmon down. I mean, just this morning on the riffles camera, we saw 89 backpack use that spot to catch salmon there.
Awesome. And heading down the river here just a bit, we're getting down to our lower river cameras where we have 3 cameras. And if you can see on the map, just for some context, if you see this line right here, that's an actual walking bridge down at the lower river, and where you can see where 3 of our cams are, starting with the River Watch.
The River Watch cam provides a panoramic view. It's a really great view. Its line of sight looks over some of the most diverse habitats along the river, including marshes, flowing water, backwater meanders, and streamside forests. In this area, the river's gradient isn't as steep as upstream. The current slows as the water approaches Naknek Lake. So this gives salmon the advantage over bears as the fish migrate upstream. If you're a bear, you must be adaptable to survive. And the lower river is a place where we see bears adapt their fishing strategies. Waiting for salmon to come to you works at the falls, but it usually fails in the lower river. So a bear would be quite hungry if that's all it did in the lower river. Sometimes bears chase salmon during the early salmon run, although that usually isn't successful because the salmon have just too much energy. There's too many escape routes for them. The lower river becomes much more lucrative for bears in late summer and fall when they can scavenge dead and dying salmon that have drifted downstream.
Yeah, one thing that I learned my first year watching is the different fishing techniques used, and one of my favorites is what they call snorkeling, when you see the bear kind of looking underwater with its ears up. Super adorable. We definitely catch that later on in the season. Mike, coming up next, we have our Cat's River View cam.
And it's a similar dynamic on the Cat's Riverview cam to our Riverwatch. This camera is named in honor of the late Catherine Green, our longtime lead camera operator, and it looks at the river mouth and Naknek Lake in early summer. This is a tough place for bears to fish. Again, when salmon are energetic, there's plenty of water for them to avoid bears. Bears face up to the challenge by biding their time or selecting their opportunities well, patrolling the riverbank, looking for any salmon that might have washed up along the shore, maybe running into the water to try to surprise fish. And this is also a place of safety for bears. On both the Riverwatch and Cat's Riverview cams, especially early in the summer, watch for young bears and family groups to seek space away from the competition of the very large adults at Brooks River.
And then we have one more cam on the bridge here, right in the middle. It's actually the underwater cam where we can see all kinds of salmon. Earlier in the season, we can see them silver, and then towards the end, it's just this wild transformation of them turning into their spawning colors. And right now, it looks like we have a rainbow trout, Mike, hanging out.
Yeah, there's at least one rainbow trout that likes to hang in the eddy, I think, just downstream of the piling where the underwater camera is mounted. And this is also, again, a great spot to watch for salmon, look for other trout, other things. And it's one of my favorite cams at the river because of its unique perspective. Even when I worked at Brooks River as a ranger, and I wasn't sticking my face in the water very often to see what was underneath there, but we can do that anytime with the underwater camera. And the adult salmon, yeah, we're going to see them undergo this amazing transformation. They arrive silvery blue, largely just silver, spotless, and then they morph into this red-bodied, green-headed, hook-jawed fish by August and September. And we get to see them changing almost day by day. The changing appearance signals to other salmon that they're ready to spawn. Pacific salmon also don't eat once they enter fresh water, nor do they return to the sea. Some of the salmon in Brooks River might go 3 months without eating before they spawn and die. If any animal in Katmai has an ability to endure hardship, it is the salmon. And sockeye salmon, they're the most abundant and conspicuous fish in the river throughout the summer. But rainbow trout, as we see here with this live look, they're common to see on the underwater camera. You can look for different species like whitefish, long-nosed suckers. There's diving ducks. Occasionally, we've even seen a lake trout or an Arctic grayling on the cameras. And even an otter or a beaver. I think there's been at least one otter sighting on the underwater camera so far this year. So in total, the combination of all the cams at Brooks River give us the chance to watch bears throughout most of the lower half of Brooks River, from the falls downstream to the river mouth.
Yeah, so we actually do have pretty good coverage of most of the river here, and we do have one bonus cam, like you mentioned, Mike, earlier, up on top of Dumpling Mountain where our repeater is. Bit of a cloudy day today, but if I go back to a highlight from a previous day, you can get just that bird's eye view of the river there towards the center of the screen.
Yeah, often the visibility on Dumpling Mountain is great when there's not clouds in the way, because the volcanoes the on the horizon in the distance, I mean, those are like 20, 25 miles straight line distance, maybe even 30 miles or farther away. So really remarkable visibility. It's an amazing wilderness landscape. And this camera is perched about 2,200 feet above sea level, and it's almost 3 miles from Brooks Falls, straight line distance. And so again, it's a really panoramic view of the surrounding mountains and lakes. So if you want to visit Katmai's Wilderness, this is the place for you.
So I think we had a bear on Cat's Riverview, so I'm going to go back to the live view.
Oh, did be cool. Awesome. And Brian, we get to watch bears on the cams all summer, but is there a season that you enjoy most on the bear cams?
Of course, that is a hard question, but I think I would have to say late September, early October, towards the end of the season, which may be counterintuitive because, you know, the bear cam season is almost ending, but that's when everything is in transition to its beautiful fall colors. And honestly, like that time of celebration where we get to see all the bears' hard work pay off, like that's super cool to see. How about you?
Yeah, it's really hard to choose. This is an exciting time of the year because the new bears are showing up every day, sometimes every hour. And but you know, September is the prettiest month at the river. I think I love the greenery and the bright green of right now, but September is really pretty with the fall colors, the really fat bears. And speaking of which, maybe we should talk about what we can expect month by month on the cams because June is a time of anticipation and exploration for the bears. Sockeye salmon usually don't arrive in large numbers until the end of the month. Consequently, bears are roaming the landscape looking for food or simply staying safe and waiting until the salmon arrive. The chance to see new bears, like I mentioned, exists every day. In particular, we've seen a lot of families with first-year cubs, such as, I think this is 132 here, if I remember
Yep.
correctly, from last week. And I think, the number of families that we've seen so far is a direct reflection of the abundance of last year's salmon run, which was huge. And also, it means that the mothers are hungry. The salmon that they ate last year fueled their ability to give birth in the den. Right now, their fat reserves are running low while their cubs' appetites continue to grow. So moms are eager to catch fish. And then there's also competition and lust in the air as well. Since June is also the peak of the bear mating season, we get glimpses into that. Male bears are roaming their home ranges, seeking mating opportunities. And this is a clip actually from last year of 164, the male who was courting 284 on June 30 last year. And if my notes are correct, 284 has been spotted with cubs this year. Female bears, not always, but they can mate with several males during the mating season. And I'm not sure if 164 and 284 were observed copulating, but that footage opens a possibility that 164 sired 284's 2026 litter. The mating season for brown bears in this area continues throughout much of July. And if you need further proof that we're in the thick of the brown bear mating season, yesterday 230, also known as Ben, was courting and copulating with female number 129. So it's ongoing right now. This is the time when their hormones are raging.
Mike, before we get to July, you mentioned the first year cubs. And for new viewers, one thing that was helpful for me the first time is just to know, hear a couple of terms that you'll see in the chat. I might correct me if I'm wrong, but the first year cubs are called spring cubs, or maybe you'll see the acronym COY or COY for Cub of the Year. And then that cub, once that cub has returned for its second summer, it's called a yearling because it's a year old. And when the cub, or most likely mom, says it's time to be on their own, then they are considered a subadult bear until they reach full adulthood. But okay, just a quick tip for you, Mike. Now that we're in late June right now, we're in the mating season. What can we expect to see in July?
Yeah, July is a month of frenzied activity compared to June. Bristol Bay sockeye salmon migration peaks in early July, and sockeye salmon surge through the river throughout most of the month, and they'll just continue to disperse through the watershed. They either reach their spawning grounds or they die trying. So the bears obviously, intuit this, and they have food on their minds. They hibernate during the winter. They can lose a third of their body weight during that time. They also lose a lot of body mass in the spring after they emerge from the den because there's really not much food available for them. And they come out of the den, like if you're a big male like Chunk, come out of the den in March, April. You're kind of just walking around for a while. Sometimes you can find some food, sometimes you can't, but you're losing a lot of weight during the spring season. So with that perspective in mind, it might be easy to understand why bears choose to face the competition and challenge of fishing out in an area like Brooks Falls where there are so many other bears. And since Brooks River is a temporary barrier to migrating salmon, bears, they migrate to the falls to eat their fill. At the falls, watch for bears competing for fishing spots and dominance. You'll see young bears practicing their craft as well as old timers who have nearly perfected their fishing strategies. It's not uncommon to see 10 or 20 or more bears fishing at the falls. This footage right here, though, was taken in 2024. In 2025, we never saw gatherings like this in July. Fish were so abundant that bears had little need to congregate at the falls in large numbers. The total number of bears at the river last year was about average over the entire summer, but the bears were just more dispersed along the river. So we just didn't see them shoved into Brooks Falls because they didn't need to compete for fishing spots. We could see a return to a more typical state, maybe something like this this year, because we shouldn't expect the salmon run to be as gigantic as last year.
Yeah, last year I had to keep reminding myself that when we're not seeing that a lot of bears at the cams, that's actually a good sign that the salmon are so abundant that they don't have to congregate at at the river. And what's interesting about August is that it's been changing over the last couple of years. So, Mike, what can we expect to see this year, do you think?
The largest numbers of individual bears that we saw at the falls at the same time in 2025 was in August. And I'm curious to know if that will be true again this year. So this is August 2025 footage. Historically, at Brooks River, the sockeye migration was essentially over by the third or fourth week of July. That's changed during the last 10 years. Sockeye continue their migration well into August. And the trend has continued for long enough now that I suspect it represents a shift in the timing of the sockeye migration. And the change has kept many bears at the river. Bear behavior differs in midsummer compared to early summer. By August, the bears have largely settled into their positions in the hierarchy. The mating season is a fading memory. So direct challenges and direct confrontations for fishing spots are less common. They still happen, but they are less common at that time. And many bears also disperse away from Brooks River to fish at other locations as the salmon spread throughout the Naknek Lake watershed. Midsummer is normally a time of plenty when bears seem to be getting fatter by the day.
And of course, all that eating leads to my favorite time of the year, fall colors and fat bears, like we see 901 from last year.
Iconic look of a brown bear there. If you pictured a fat bear, hey, this is probably which is something similar that you had in your mind. And for most of the bears at the river, September and October provide the last chances to eat high-calorie foods before the bears enter hibernation. Late summer and early fall are what I like to call peak fat at Brooks River. In the streams and lakes around Brooks River, most of the area's salmon runs have played out by this time. Bears who didn't use the river in early summer begin to show up, and bears who departed in August migrate back to feed on spawning salmon. Brooks River allows bears to fish for salmon every day between late June and late October. Perhaps no other river on earth provides bears with the same opportunity to fish for salmon for 4 straight months in the same place at the same time. It's a really remarkable place. Remember always that bears are opportunists, and Brooks River provides bears with many opportunities which they do not waste. One additional thing that I'd like to share about the river concerns Brooks River as a peopled landscape. Lots of people visit Brooks River today. Somewhere around 20,000 came to Brooks River last year. We don't know exactly when people first arrived at Brooks River, but I hypothesize that bears and people colonized the area about the same time at the end of the last ice age. So as soon as the ice left, people were moving in, bears were moving in. We know, though, that it has been used by people nearly continuously for the last 5,000 years at least, which is what has been confirmed through archaeological investigations. And this image here marks the locations of known archaeological and culturally significant surface features at the river. Each purple splotch was a house or a storage pit or a community gathering place. There's something like 900 of them along the river corridor. It's just the whole river itself should be considered an archaeological site, not just these individual splotches along, on this image here. But Brooks River remains a place of reverence for Alaska Native peoples in the Katmai region, and we're thankful to be able to share this place with everyone around the world.
Yeah, it's super cool. Mike, not only can people watch all the bear cams all summer, but they can learn more about the bears from you and the other park rangers. And pretty much we have an event every single day of the week coming up this summer. It's starting with, we're starting tomorrow with the first play-by-play, but on Mondays we're starting a new type of show for the live Q&A.
Yeah. So the Monday Q&A, that will start next week. So not today, but we're going to start it next week. And we know that there's so many questions that people have. A lot of times we have answers, a lot of times we don't, but the Rangers and I wanted to give you more opportunity to get your questions answered. So that's going to be a live Q&A with us. We're going to be on camera answering questions submitted in advance and questions that we get from our live audience. And then our play-by-plays, those are always really fun. We'll have 2 of those per week where we voice over the activity at Brooks River. Maybe we'll break down some clips of bear activity, other things that we have seen along the river. And then every week, we're also going to have a live chat as well. This week, I think, is on sockeye salmon. And then we're going to have an hour-long program every week. And you notice that all of these times are Alaska time, too. So do your own conversions. If you're on the East Coast, it's 4 hours. ahead. So, for example, that live chat on Wednesdays will be 7 p.m. my time. And then finally, we have just a Q&A in the chat on YouTube. Those are always really busy events for an hour or two on Fridays. So you can join us for that.
Awesome. And real quick question, especially for the new viewers, Mike, if people do have questions, whether it's for the Monday show or even during live programs, what's the best way that they can submit questions to make sure you get them?
Yeah, we have a form that we use. It's just a Google form. So we ask you just to fill out your first name and what you're asking, and that's essentially it. If you're curious about brown bears, salmon, katmai, you can drop it in there. We have a link to that in the info tab on the Bear Cam pages on explore.org. But if you need to find the direct link, for example, if you're watching this on YouTube, then ask a moderator for that. They'll be happy to provide a link to that. And I do read each and every question that is submitted. I wish I had time to answer them all. We're going to try to get to more of those this year, but I do read each and every one. So thanks everybody who has submitted their questions through that form. So looking back at a live view of Brooks Falls right now, this camera gets millions of views every year. Millions of people visit explore.org to watch brown bears fishing for salmon. It's a special privilege for us to share Brooks River and its bears with you. We have some important information or an interview to share about the technology of the bear cams and the upgrades that happened this year. Real quick though, at the beginning of the program, we asked you to share who you thought or which bears you were looking forward to seeing this year. And we got a ton of those submissions so far. So Beatlesby was looking for 856. Maisie BB was looking for 602. I'm not going to have time to read them all. Just browsing here. Vicky E89 was waiting for 503, 674, and the 26s. Can't wait to see them. And don't forget 128. Yeah, several people have mentioned 128 Grazer. Bear 32, who just showed up today. So John Lopez 9626. 32 was on the cameras earlier today. Yeah, other people looking for 503, 856. Someone still hoping for a return of 747. That's not out of the realm of possibility. We didn't see him last year, but sometimes bears just take a break from the river. So keep looking. And then, yeah, Rolling Trouble looking for Jolly and her 3 cubs. I call them the little follies. could be a folly for her. We'll see. So yeah, lots of things to look for. We're going to try to answer a couple of viewer questions real quick when we come back. But first, I want to get to an interview because underlying the bear cam watching experience is a system of electronics, satellite and radio antennas, solar power systems, and batteries that are all necessary to keep the cams functional and transmit the webcam signal anywhere in the world with an internet connection. A lot of planning and a lot of work is necessary to make the bear cams a success. And to learn more about that, I talked with explore.org's Director of Field Operations, Joe Pifer, and here's our conversation. Joe, great to see you. I know you had quite an adventure and had a lot of hard work up at Brooks River, so I'm glad you can take some time to share what you did there.
Hey, Mike, it's nice to see you. My pleasure to share. Yes, we did a significant amount of work this year, probably more than I ever have since I've been on board with explore.org.
And you when did you leave Brooks, or how long were you at Brooks River? You were there for more than a week or about a week?
I think it was grand total of like 8 days. Just 8 really long, I'd say at least 14-hour days of just going like pretty aggressively at our install and moving all of our equipment around and everything. So pretty sure it was 8 days. You know, the days there kind of blend together, and some single days feel like 2 or 3 days sometimes. So time kind of has a different effect on me when I'm up there.
And I think things were complicated for you because parts of Alaska experienced one of the coldest winters on record this year. Did that affect your efforts to revive the Katmai bear cams?
Well, it did. Originally, we were going to go out, I think, June 2nd or 3rd. And then we were getting reports back that there was still ice in Naknek Lake. And there was a lot of issues with getting boats in and basically getting our gear all gear into the camp to even open the camp. So we pushed it back, and so that was the biggest, I guess, obstacle in the way. Rather than being there while opening was kind of really complicated. My thoughts were like, why don't we just we'll just delay it. So we'll just hear stories about how difficult it was rather than adding to the difficulty of what already has to happen just to open camp. So we pushed it back. I think we arrived June 13th.
And you didn't have, as I understand it, a lot of information about the status of the webcam equipment on Dumpling Mountain this year. That's still an important component of the bear cam system at Brooks River. Not only do we have a webcam there, but we also are still using that to relay some camera feeds out of the Brooks River area. So when you got on top of Dumpling Mountain, what did you discover when you were up there?
Well, luckily last year we prepped ourselves for an easy Dumpling Mountain experience this year. So I actually had backup batteries just sitting up there waiting to be hooked up. So I knew that, like, worst case scenario, all we're going to do is hook up new batteries and kind of give everything a once over and repair any minor damages. So Dumpling was actually easy this year in that we didn't have to use any helicopters or do any sling loading. So when we got up there, there was some damage at the summit. There was clearly something was chewing on some stuff. It looks like a bear. And so we fixed all of that. What else was there? But it was really, considering how many things could go wrong up there, it was actually pretty nice that there were, we spent maybe 2 hours on top of the mountain, which I think that's never happened. Like, it's usually an 8-hour day once you get to the top of the mountain. But there was just minor damage and then hooking up new batteries, and then we were rolling,
Yeah, that's good to hear. I was worried that there was going to be some sort of um, like maybe wind-driven disaster up on Dumpling Mountain because it gets fierce up there. That's why there's no trees. And with such a harsh winter, we didn't really know maybe what was happening up there until you got there. So that's good news. But you said you had a ton of other work to do, and especially at Brooks Falls, and that's our most popular webcam on explore.org. But we've been hindered there by bandwidth limitations in the past and power supply for many years. I know that you did a lot of work to improve the power supply there. Can you kind of walk us through what happened there?
Sure. So we basically redid the entire power system at the falls, which is something that we've been talking about for years. And this was fine. Like, this was the year that we were just gonna, okay, let's do this once and for all. So what we did was we removed all of the old equipment. So there's old solar panels on top of that roof. And we installed 12 panels now, on both aspects of the roof. So, the sun is going like this over the treehouse. And before, the panels were only on one aspect, so you would really only get kind of half a day of sun. So now we have 6 panels on one side, 6 on the other. So during these long days, we just doubled our charge capacity for our battery bank, and upgraded the panels themselves, upgraded the potential power that they can generate to recharge the batteries. We put in a pretty heavy duty power system out there. So now, like in years past, for me, I was always worried about the falls, and trying and constantly micromanaging the power load. We were turning the cameras off and on during certain times. Like, if weather was bad, we would try to reduce the load just to try to elongate how long things could stay live. Now with what we did, I'm very comfortable with that. We should be good. And that'll help tremendously with next year, with planning the next trip, planning what all do we have to do. It's going to take a lot of the unknown out of the equation, which will be, it just goes really far when it comes to planning and the logistics and What kind of equipment do we have to get up there? Um, so the power system not only helps the cameras stay live longer and more consistently, but it also helps us with just the overall planning of our future trips and everything. Like it's priceless when it comes to the amount of effort that we just put in is going to benefit us for the next like 20 or 30 years without a doubt.
Yeah, so next time you go up, you can think about like how hard you had to work in 2026 and maybe how much less work you have to do in
Yes.
the future. For us, though, on the receiving end of the webcams, the Falls cam, I've just been watching it over the last few days. The video there looks crisp and clear. It really looks great. What were you able to do to better, kind of integrate terrestrial satellite internet and maybe just free up more bandwidth for the Falls cam?
Yeah, so the biggest things we did, so we integrated a dedicated circuit at the treehouse, which is right there at the falls camera, and we put one in at Lower River as well. So what it ultimately does is it frees up all the bandwidth going over our terrestrial internet coming out of King Salmon for just the falls. So there's nothing else saturating that circuit. So that's just dedicated to one camera. And now we have these other options that we can depend on for, let's say, like there's a power outage in King Salmon, like that just happened yesterday. We can do some shuffling on our end and bring the cameras live through other avenues that we have options. So really just redundancy. We essentially have triple redundancy now as far as internet goes to all of the cameras except for the Lower River North camera, which I believe is called Riverwatch. I'll explore that.
Yes.
That and the underwater camera, they only have two redundancies instead of three. In our fall trip, they will have three redundancies.
Well, that's great to hear too. And I do have one final question for you. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Did you have any bear sightings or any notable wildlife encounters? I know you already mentioned before we started talking during this interview that the biting insects were quite bothersome at times. So that was an experience that you had. But what about other animals?
I only saw I saw only two bears the entire time. So by far, the bugs were insane everywhere. Literally, there wasn't a single spot anywhere that didn't have bugs flying in your face or biting you. But yeah, this was I didn't see very many bears at all. It was kind of surprising, but some years are like that, they're out there and they're just not, I just can't see them.
Right. Yeah. The salmon run is just starting, even right now as we record this interview. So it's going to be a while before the bears maybe show up in large numbers. But Joe, I want to thank you for all your hard work up there at Brooks River. I know it's a ton of work and a ton of planning. It's just not the time that you're there, but all the labor that you and BJ and your team do beforehand to make sure that we have bear camps for the summer. So thanks again for that. And thanks for your time here today.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks again to Joe Pifer, Explodador's Director of Field Operations, for sharing that information with us. We love to see the views of the river, and it's largely due to his hard work, the work of his team to get the cameras back online every year. And if you want, of course, want to watch the bears anytime, explodador.com/bears. Before we get towards the end of our program today, I know we're counting down. We have lots of updates to share about our bird nest camps as well. But Brian, I wanted to get to a couple of quick audience questions. This is maybe one that you might be able to answer because I don't know. So sorry for putting you on the spot, but Kara Lee Landers, 1860, asks, what model of cameras are used for the bear cams?
As you, we have a big variety of different specific brands and models that we use, but just to kind of give you an idea of like you imagine like a security camera that you may have at your house or you've seen at like, a store or something. We basically use those, but just on a much bigger scale. These are probably the biggest ones you can get as far as like a security camera, and then they have that moving head where it's the PTZ moving heads, which our volunteer camera operators can control remotely from anywhere in the world. It's actually very, very cool.
And then one other quick question that I can try to get to is Barry Dixon 9022, who wrote in, can Mount Katmai be seen from the Dumpling Mountain camera? And Mount Katmai is the volcano that collapsed during the 1912 volcanic eruption. If Brian, I don't know, can we go back to that that Clear Day clip of
Yeah, I was
from
just trying to
Dumpling
find it.
Mountain
Here we go.
at the beginning? Yeah, if you can pause it right here.
Sure.
There's a mountain on the left. That's Mount Katmai. Sorry, I didn't bring the telestrator up on my end of things. But yeah, that's, Mount Katmai is sort of like that big range that's sort of like on the foreground of the horizon. And then there's a volcano, some volcanic peaks to the right of Mount Katmai that are very snow covered. They're taller than Katolanat is on the left. Sorry, I'm getting things confused. K's, too many K's. So Katolanat is that range in the foreground on the left. And then there's volcanoes kind of to the right behind there. We're actually, in this view, we're generally looking almost, not quite due south, but pretty well south. Mount Katmai would have loomed over the sort of right-hand portion of Mount Katolanat. Prior to June 6, 1912, we would have seen a 7,500, 7,600 foot volcano poking its head up over there, and now it is not visible. So we can't really see the rim of Mount Katmai on the Dumpling Mountain cam, but we can see Trident Volcano, we can see Mount McGeek, we can see Mount Martin, and sometimes a couple of others as well. I should actually do a program where we talk about the mountains on the cameras and some of the landmarks that we can see in the Dumpling Mountain camera. So maybe that's in the future for this summer. But thanks for that question, and thanks for all the other audience questions. I think we're going to move on from Katmai, Brian, because there's a ton of other stuff to talk about on explore.org.
Yeah, and real quick, it looks like 32 Chunk just paid a visit here. So just want to get a quick.
That's it.
It's, of course, we have our Fat Bear Week champion from last year. But of course, before we conclude our program, we don't want to miss all of the bird activity on explore.org. Of course, we have our bird naturalist, Holly Garrett. Holly, thanks for joining us. And I think you mentioned that this is your first year watching Bear Cam. So I'm curious if anything as a first-time viewer, if you have any questions or if there's anything you're excited to see this summer.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. I am really excited to be watching the bear cams this year. I am, of course, a bird person, but the bears they're so easy to steal your heart. And I think there's a couple of things I'm really excited about. I'm really excited to just start to get to know the bears, because it's really cool to see that everyone can recognize the different bears. So I'm really curious to start learning how we can recognize the different individuals, start to get to know them, because it is, I think, one of the coolest parts of animal observation is when you can really recognize individuals, like their different personalities kind of start to come out, and it's really cool. And I will also say, as a bird person, I really like the underwater cam, and I'm really excited about what birds might be detected there. Like I would love to see some sort of eiders or I'm just very excited to see what kind of birds we might be seeing underwater also foraging. So that's but I'm very much looking forward to joining Bear Watch.
Awesome. And I will say, Mike, you're very good at IDing bears. I am so terrible at it. But for any of our other new viewers, the easiest one is, of course, 32 Chunk, because he does have that big scar on his nose and he has the injury from his jaw. So if you need to identify one bear today, that's the one.
Okay, that's a great start, honestly.
Yeah. It's almost like, Holly, it's almost like identifying birds, like, hey, I know that's a robin, and that other bird over there is not a robin. So where do I go from there? So it's like that with Chunk. Like, I know that's Chunk, or I know that's not Chunk. And then you sort of start from there.
So I have Chunk and not Chunk. That's a great start.
Awesome. So, Holly, let's get back to your expertise on this week's Egg Watch.
Yeah, this is our June 29, 2026 edition of Egg Watch, where we check on the bird nesting activity of our myriad cams on explore.org. We include a welcome into the world for more roller chicks and some newfound freedom for eaglets and peregrine iasses in this as well. Holly, thanks for coming back and joining us for this. Let's start with our Seal Island birds. We're still waiting for those eggs to hatch in the Guillemot burrow.
We are, yes. So we have been watching the Guillemot burrow since June 5th when the camera went online, and we've had 2 eggs as of June 5th. And so they start incubating really when that second egg has been laid. So we should be seeing that they'll be hatching anytime next week. So hopefully sometime around July 3rd or 4th, because it really does take them about a month to incubate. So yeah, definitely I would be on egg watch for them next week. And the hatching can actually take for them anywhere from 1 to 4 days. So we could be seeing these birds take quite a few days to actually get out of these eggs.
Then our Puffin burrow, the puffling there, who is nicknamed Tillie, is doing really well. This is one of the cutest bird chicks. Of all the species that we see, I mean, these ones are particularly adorable.
I know. I just think baby pufflings they're just so fluffy and cute. And yeah, great to see that we welcome Tillie to the world hatching on June 13th. And the parents will probably continue brooding, usually for around 9 days, until the birds are about 9 days old. And then we're looking at around a month and a half until fledge. So we're gonna be watching little Tillie grow quite a bit now.
And check the above ground cameras on Seal Island as well, because the tern chicks, the common tern chicks, have hatched, and they are adorable fluff balls as well. I've been enjoying those over the past few days when I've checked in on those cams. And thanks to our partners there at the Audubon Seabird Institute on Seal Island National Wildlife Refuge. Let's go to Europe real quick, Holly, because we've gotten not 1, not 2, but 5 roller chicks at this point.
Yeah, we have 5 roller chicks, which is fantastic. And what we're seeing there is we had our first chick hatch. So these chicks have been hatching around every other day. We had our first chick hatch on June 20th, our second chick hatch on June 21st, and then our third chick hatch on June 23rd, and our fourth chick hatch on June 25th.
Oh, and I have to correct myself. It's just 4 currently in the nest.
Okay.
I can't count. So anyway.
No worries. I was curious because I think yesterday was kind of what I had flagged as the last possible day for that 5th egg to potentially hatch. But I think at this point, we're not going to see it hatch. And I think those parents are really going to have their beaks full trying to feed these 4 chicks. It's kind of cool because there's a bit of a gap between that second and third chick. You can kind of see that, and even between the first and the fourth chick, you can really see the difference between even a 9-day-old chick versus a 4-day-old chick. And we're already seeing that first chick start to open its eyes. And what is really wild is with this is just one of my favorite cams, as I've mentioned, but it's the parents are bringing back these huge insects, and you just don't think these little birds are going to be able to eat them, but then all of a sudden they're swallowing like a whole grasshopper. So this one is quite a bit of fun to watch. And even the youngest, smallest chick, I always get, you always worry that sometimes the younger chicks have a harder time fighting for food, but the smallest chick is still getting these huge insects. So really cool cam to watch.
Yeah, it certainly is. And thanks to Ornis Italica for partnering with us there. Let's talk about Peregrine Falcons because we're on, I think, fledge watch for our Chesapeake Falcons right now, Holly.
We are on fledge watch for them. They should be fledging anytime now. We've been seeing them since they hatched in around mid-May. Now is about the time to see them fledging, and we'll be seeing them. Really, just looks like we have a full nest full of Peregrine Falcons at this point. So just a cool one to keep an eye on as they start they're just more active, and we'll be saying goodbye to them pretty soon here.
And it can be hard to know when they've fledged at this at that location because they're on a ledge of a building. They have a lot of space to kind of
Mm.
move back and forth, practice hopping and things like that. One day there's just not going to be any birds on the camera, maybe for a couple days, and all of a sudden like one or two will show back up. So keep an eye on it. Maybe we'll get real lucky and we'll get to see one of them hop off the ledge and take their first flight, but it can be difficult there. In contrast, though, at Castle Rock, we can congratulate all of the ISs there because they have fledged, and they fledged, I think, just right after our last More to Explore show.
They did actually, yeah. They fledged right after our last program. So we had Twix fledge on June 14th, Heath fledge right after that on June 15th, and Snickers and Kit Kat stayed in the nest for a couple more days, but then we saw them fledge on June 17th. So congratulations to the Castle Rock Peregrine Falcons, and yeah, best of luck to these young peregrines as they figure out their wings and figure out how to hunt.
And our partner for the Chesapeake Falcons is the Chesapeake Conservancy. Our partner for the Castle Rock Falcons is the Raptor Resource Project. Let's look at some larger raptors right now, Holly. At Channel Islands, we can also celebrate the success of fledging at Fraser Point.
We can, yes. So we did see, and we saw quite a bit of a gap too between the fledging for these eaglets. But we had Sasha fledge early in June on June 9th. And then Zuma was force fledged around June 20th, and Ryder was also force fledged after part of the nest collapsed on June 22nd. Though, and so a force fledge is kind of when something might happen to push the bird out of the nest instead of the bird naturally leaving the nest on its own. But and I know there was quite a bit of concern about Ryder since the nest collapsed. But fortunately, these birds are fully grown at this point. So if there was a time for them to kind of be forced out of the nest, this is a good time for them to still be able to survive. And the parents will keep feeding these guys for at least 4 to 8 weeks after they fledge. And that's because with raptors, learning to hunt is just such a big skill, so they really do need more of that parental help after they've left the nest to figure out how to feed themselves. So I think we can be confident that the parents are still looking after these guys even after they've left the nest.
Thanks to the Institute for Wildlife Studies for helping us with that camera. In the mid-continent of North America at the Decorah Fish Hatchery Nest, congratulations to Hatchery Dad and Hatchery Mom because their 2 eaglets have fledged as well.
Yes, we saw DH4 fledge on the morning of June 18th, and DH3 wasn't long behind on the afternoon of June 18th. So it's been really cool to watch these 2 eaglets grow up and similar to our Fraser Point eagles, they are also gonna still probably be getting fed by the parents and following the parents around to different foraging sites. But we will see afterwards they will have a kind of a nomadic period for a few years as they figure out how to be an eagle and figure out where to go, what to do, how to hunt. So pretty cool. Hopefully we'll see them again soon because they do like to come back to where they were born.
And then before we leave the Raptor Resource Project, they also partner with the Philippine Eagle Foundation, and we have cameras in the Philippines looking at Philippine eagles. Bayani now is somewhere around 6 months old, I think, Holly, and getting bigger and better able to fly, looking really, really great.
Yeah, Bayani is a joy to watch too. This is one again you're gonna want to tune in more in the evenings as right now I believe the Philippines is about 12 to 14 hours ahead of us, so harder to watch when the bird is sleeping, but really cool to just watch this bird practice flying. Just an incredibly powerful bird of prey, and you can just watching these birds, I think even just test out his wings and figure himself out is just really cool to see.
Then back to North America on the West Coast in Oregon, we're looking at burrowing owls there. And we get to see, there's actually 2 families. I didn't realize this at first because our camera was kind of, I think, focused on one burrow, but there's 2 burrows kind of right next to each other there, Holly, and both of them look like they have really healthy owlets. It's been really fun to watch the burrowing owls here at the burrowing owl burrows, I guess, for a lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I think these nests are both at just like some of the funnest stages I think to watch because these owls are really just running, hopping. They're kind of starting to do short flights. They'll really start flying by around 6 weeks old. And then, but they're going to be staying by the burrow, probably not fledging until around mid-August. So I think the next month is just going to be really fun to watch for these guys because you just kind of watch them goofing around. I was looking at this cam earlier this week and we were watching one of them take a dust bath is what it looked like. It just looked like a pancake that like became a pancake on the ground. So these guys, I just find they're so charismatic and funny and watching them just kind of with their long legs, I think makes them even goofier looking. So they're just so fun to watch.
And thanks to the Owl Research Institute for partnering with us there. We're going to stick with the Owl Research Institute for one more camera right now in Charlo, Montana, not looking at owls, but looking at osprey. And we have one healthy growing chick in the nest. We also experienced a loss in this nest recently, Holly.
Yes, we did have a loss on June 18th, unfortunately. It was really sad to see, but one chick did die of exposure. The chick kind of wandered off during the night, and because the chick was still so young, it really needed the mom to brood it in order to survive the night. And since Montana can have some chilly evenings, we were pretty sure it died of exposure by just accidentally wandering away from the mom. And there are a few reasons why this may have happened. One thing we were kind of all hypothesizing might have been that because it was also a new moon, it was very dark, and so Osprey can't see well in the dark, so it's possible that she may have felt something, the mom, but she might not have seen the chick wander off. She also, I believe, is most likely a younger mom. Looking at just when I've seen some of her flight shots, it looks like she has some retained juvenile feathers, which is pointing me to her likely being a second or third year bird. So she might also just be a bit new to this. And so a chick wandering off, she didn't realize it, wasn't sure what to do. So it's still a very, very sad event. But we have noticed now the current chick is doing great, really growing up fast. So we'll keep an eye for this one to watch this osprey keep growing. We're probably going to see expected fledge in early August. So this is going to be another one. We're going to see this osprey really start to grow up in the month of July.
And we're also looking forward to the return of our Chesapeake Bay Osprey cam. That camera has been offline since June 22nd. It should be back online soon, so we're hoping to get it up sooner rather than later. And we still have time with those chicks, expected fledge there, mid to late August. Holly, the spoonbills, though, they've been doing other things down in Florida and other wading birds. I mean, there's been still a great amount of activity here, even though we're heading into basically the height of summer.
Yeah, we are still, because these birds are colonial nesters, so we just kind of see big groups of them all nesting together. What it does mean is we see all different stages of nests, especially throughout the summer. We can see we're already starting to see some of the younger birds from May, fledge, but we are still seeing some of the chicks. And I always find the chicks for these wading birds just look so goofy at first. They kind of have this they have like a lanky look, but then they don't quite have feathers yet, so they're just kind of odd looking. But yeah, this is just a fun one to check out because there's just all sorts of stages of nests still going on, and a lot of the chicks are getting bigger at this point. So definitely check this one out for sure.
And then finally, we wanted to remind you of the tufted puffins and pelagic cormorants that you can see on Round Island State Game Sanctuary, home to the walrus cameras. So we get to see some very interesting birds in a very remote place nesting there. Holly, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. I know that's a lot to talk about and keep track of, but we're looking forward to having more updates from you in the near future.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike and Brian, and great to check in on all these nests.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly and Mike. And thank you all for joining us today. We are wrapping it up right exactly as an hour. Be sure to check out the bears and the birds, and be sure to come back for another episode of More to Explore on July 13. And until then, happy exploring.